Hello everyone, my name is Roy Jafari and I would like to welcome you to another video. In this video we're going to talk about a very exciting data transformation technique. This technique is called attribute construction, and it is one of those techniques that rely on the resourcefulness of the person who's using it. We're going to see 5 examples of attribute construction, but the core of attribute construction comes from 2 understandings. The first one is we want to construct a new attribute or new attributes based on the data we already have, and we go about doing this based on, this is the second part, based on our understanding, or rather deep understanding of the environment that data is being collected from. So it allows us to be able to make reasonable assumptions to be able to construct the attributes. Alright, so let me go over this one more time. So one of the things is that we are going to be creating new attributes based on the data that we have. And another thing is we are going to need to base the construction of the new attribute is our understanding that leads to reasonable assumptions that allow us to make these new attributes. The best way for us to actually learn about attribute construction is to see a couple of examples. In this video, we're going to see 5 different examples of how attribute construction can be done. But there are three applications that attribute construction can help us with. The first one is when we want to move from categorical attribute to the numerical ones. We did see that we've got some standard way to go about this, but attribute construction is going to be a method that, if you're willing to make more assumptions, can actually do a better data transformation and create those numbers from the categorical attributes. And then we've got, if we need to combine attributes, this could be looked at as data reduction technique, but at the same time it's attribute construction. And of course another one is when we prepare for data fusion, which is a helpful way to for our data integration. I think the best way to learn about these is through examples. So the first example we're going to look at is, we've already seen in the previous video. It's when we wanted to move from an ordinal attribute to the numerical ones. And we did see, we of course could binary coding or ranking transformation, and we did see that we have some pros and cons. And attribute construction here could come in sort of like in the middle of these 2 methods, and at the same time that it keeps the information regarding the orders of the possibilities of the the ordinal attribute, but at the same time it tries to capture the relationship between these possibilities in a better way based on our understanding of the environment that the data is collected from. So instead of using education level, how about we use education years? Then the typical number of years an individual needs to spend in rigorous education system for them to be qualified for that degree. And you can see on this one, when that we have constructed a new attribute based on our understanding from the decision-making environment. Now we are able to capture and keep the ordinal information at the same time. Now we can see, for instance, the difference between high school and bachelor is plus 4 years, or the difference between bachelor and master is plus 2 years, and so on and so forth. So there is a more reasonable relationship between the possibilities of the ordinal attributes after being transformed. And of course, we've made assumptions. I mean, not everyone uses 2 years to get a master's degree. They may take 1 year or 3 years or 4 years. But by making an assumption that these are the typical number of years that one would need to study for these degrees, we could do this attribute construction, and it might actually be the right answer for our analytics. All right, so let's look at another example. This example is when we want to combine attributes to get less number of attributes as a way to construct attributes. One of the things that you have seen is the BMI, body mass index, and this body mass index, which is a health index, is the aftermath or a byproduct of an attribute construction. The physicians who were in charge or wanted to come up with one metric that would capture weight and height to tell us if your weight is healthy for your height, then came up with this BMI, which is a combination of the height and weight in a specific way. And when they did that, now you can see that there is just one attribute that can capture the health of an individual. So for instance, we can sort of see if we have to look at height and weight, there is this relationship between height and weight and the health situation of an individual. But once we do this attribute construction, now we can condense those two attributes into one, and by knowing that just BMI, just one value, we could see if someone is healthy, normal, weak, obese, and so on and so forth, right? So when we go about attribute construction, we have to be positioned well to be able to come up with such formula, right? I mean, not everyone could have come up with this formula, so it's well researched and is backed by physicians who understand the human body, right? So we have to trust that they did their research, they did their experimentation to come up with this formula, and that is the deep understanding that these physicians or researchers had to be able to perform this attribute construction. Another example here, we're going to focus on categorical attribute. We want to move to the numerical attribute. So for instance, eye color. If we needed this attribute to be numerical for whatever reason, of course we could do binary coding exactly like the way it's been done here. Amber 1000001 and then gray 00010. We could have done this, or we could have been a little bit more creative and say, you know what, I think I want to keep the relationship that these colors have with one another, right? I mean, we could look at these colors as names, but at the same time we could look at them as the visual experience that we have as humans, right? So we could use the RGB color code that is used to create color in our devices, in our computers, on our cell phones, and it creates all different colors based on this RGB code, which basically says how much red, how much green, and how much blue you want to produce, right? So once you understand this RGB code, instead of having to say 0, you do a binary code, you could come up with a 3-number representation for each of these colors that not only captures the distinction between these colors, but also keeps the similarity between these colors. So for instance, there is a abrupt complete distinction between amber and gray. They're completely different things. I mean, there is 1 0, but here we can see the amber and gray, there are some similarity between them. I mean, as far as blueness, gray is much more blue than amber, but as far as greenness, they're more similar. And then as far as redness, there is some redness in the gray as amber as well. So by understanding that there is such coding and our deeper understanding of the data collection environment, we may have been able to be more creative and come up with this second way to transform our data to switch from categorical to numerical. At the same time, be able to keep the relationship between our possibilities in our categorical data. Another example, we want to look at, categorical attribute to numerical ones. So this one is an example of, personality type, right? Of course, when we have, these 16 personality type, MBTI personalities, we could be doing something like this. We could be, doing the binary coding. We've got 16 possible personality type. We could do this, and this is the simplest way we could move from the categorical attribute to the numerical one. But there are other ways to go about this. And if you have a deeper understanding of these personality type, you could do this in different ways, right? So for instance, if you understand this 16 personality type, MBTI, they are consisted of 4 letters, right? And the first letter is either E or I, extroverted, introverted. The second letter is either sensing or intuition, S or R, S or it's represented with an S or N, right? And then in the third letter, you've got either thinking or feeling. And on the fourth letter, you either have a perceptive or judging, right? So, if you knew this, you could have done better because now you can, code this based on only 4 attributes, right? Right? You don't need 16 binary attributes. You could have done this with 4 binary attributes. So that's one level of improvement. But again, we could have known more about these. One of the other things that we could know more about this is the fact that these 16 personality types comes from actually the combination of 8 cognitive functions. We've got these 8 cognitive functions. I happen to know a lot about these, but let's just assume that what we are doing here is not to sort of dig deeper to these personality types. I'm just trying to provide an example of if you know the the data collection environment deeper and better, you might be able to do better in terms of attribute construction. So there are these 8 cognitive functions, and each of these 16 personality type that we have, all of them here, 8 of them are here and 8 of them are here. They either have a dominant or auxiliary one of these functions, right? So for instance, ISTJ, its dominant cognitive function is SI and its auxiliary is TE, and so on and so forth. So if we knew this theory and we had a good understanding of it, we could have, transformed the data by 8, numerical attributes, and by giving 1 to the dominant function and giving 0.5 to the auxiliary function, for instance, ISTP, right? So ISTP is here, the dominant is TI, and auxiliary SE, right? So we could give 1 to the dominant and 0.5 to the auxiliary, and this would allow us to keep the relationship between these personality types, at the same time keep how they are different from one another, right? So that's another way to do this. Here it's just for you to be able to see this. I've used gray and black colors just for you to be able to see this better. There's another way to go about this actually. If you knew even deeper, you would know that one of the creators of MBTI personality have this map in their books, right? So you could for instance see this relationship and try to capture that relationship in your analysis. So you could see 2 dimensions. So there is this dimension from personal to logical, and there is another dimension here from present to possible. And instead of having all these 16 personality, we could code these based on these two dimensions. We could say, okay, I've got two new dimensions here. One is the personal logical spectrum, and the other one is present, right? So now I could sort of like give them some numbers. I mean, these are all assumptions that you could be making if you have a good understanding of, you know, the theory of personality types, specifically MBTI. So I could be saying, okay, let me give these numbers to these values. So I would imagine this is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, right? This would be 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. This would be 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 3. And this would be 3, 0, 3, 1, 3, 2, and 3, 3, right? So I could you know, use this you know, map that I just created to fill out these ones. All right, so you know, you can see now I was able to use the understanding to, you know, come to two numerical attributes. But again, pay attention that as I go deeper and rely on my more understanding of the data collection environment and the theory behind all of this, I am relying on more assumptions to be able to sort of like create these attributes and construct them. All right. So this serves as a good examples of, you know, you could be doing as simple as binary coding, or you could go deeper and construct, you know, attributes that have a lot of assumptions, but these are good assumptions that comes from our understanding. And, you know, based on your analysis and how much importance there you want to see for you to keep the relationship between these possibilities of personality type, either of these you know, ways of going about transforming categorical attribute personality type to a numerical one might be the answer to go. All right, the last example we want to look at here is the example of, you know, using attribute construction as a way to prepare for data fusion, right? So for instance, we have this example that we've got the yield data and treatment data of precision agriculture. And these data, you know, are collected using different devices, you know, on each of these, you know, water station. There is a sensor that, you know, collects the amount of water has been dispensed. And there is also a sensor on each of these blades in the combined machine that calculates or captures the amount of yield that has, you know, come through that blade in that point in time, in that location in time. Right, so you've got these two data sets. For instance, you've got, you know, on the treatment data, longitude and latitude, and the yield data, longitude and latitude. You've got the water, amount of water dispensed, and you've got the amount of harvest from, you know, the yield data. If you, you know, sort of like, you know, naively look at these two data, you say, okay, it's very easy. You know, just connect their rows together. But, you know, you can see that this is only 128 rows, and these are, you know, 1800 rows, and there is clearly no connection, not complete connections between these, you know, longitude and latitude. And if you were to actually put these on a map and visualize them, these blue dots represent water or yield points. No, actually treatment points. And the gray ones represent the yield points, right? So you do see that, you know, you don't have that connection. That is, you know, the definition of data objects are completely different, and you cannot really integrate these in an easy way. So as a way to do the integration, we might be able to do attribute construction and at the same time do a data fusion. How would we go about this? We have to come to a series of assumptions, right? So I come to this assumption that each of these water points has a radius, right? So this is the radius, for instance, this water point. Let me make a better job of doing a circle. So let's say this is the radius of this water point, and then if the treatment point falls in the radius of each of these water point, then based on how close the treatment point is to the water point, I will calculate the part of this water, the water that's been dispensed here, to be included as a water that has been received in this data, in this data object, right? So based on these assumptions, I come to another attribute. I construct this new attribute. So this is the constructed attribute that uses this data, right, based on some assumptions to come to a water value that is proportionate to amount of water received based on each of these water points and based on the similarity of these points, right? So I was able to fuse these two data sources, but by coming up with a new attribute based on some assumptions. Alright, so before finishing this video, let's talk about if attribute construction is, data massaging or not. If we pay attention to all of the examples that we saw, the only one, except the last one, we had other choices. We didn't have to, do the data transformation. We only did the data transformation to be able to, have an more effective analysis. So for all of those, we had data massaging. The last one also was data massaging, and we had to massage the data for us to be able to do the data integration. And even though it is out of necessity, but at the same time we change the data with a lot of assumptions for us to be able to do that. Therefore, I would also say even the last example was an example of data massaging, and if of course the last example was actually a data fusion, which falls under data integration. Until the next video.